Welcome to On the Road to COP16 Riyadh, conversations on land, people, and planet. In this first episode, we look forward to celebrating Land Day, a day dedicated to highlighting the essential role of land in ensuring climate resilience, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable livelihoods. We are honored to have a very special guest with us today, Billy Dumaliang, a UNCCD land hero and environmental champion. Billy is the co-founder and advocacy director of the Masungi Georeserve Foundation in the Philippines, spearheading an ambitious reforestation project to restore 2,700 hectares of degraded land. Join us as we talk about the significance of nature-based solutions, the vital role of private sector engagement, and the inspiring initiatives being driven by Billy and her dedicated team. But first, let's hear from Paula Padrino Villela, Program Officer at the G20 Global Land Initiative, implemented through the Coordination Office under the oversight of the UNCCD. Paula is also instrumental in organizing Land Day at the 16th session of the Conference of the Parties in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, from December 2nd to 13th, 2024. Paula, could you share with us what we can expect on Land Day, taking place on December 4th?
Land Day at COP16 is dedicated to address the pressing issue of land degradation. We have a global challenge ahead, and we need to restore up to 3 billion hectares of land. Land Day is focusing on three main pillars. First of all, nature-based solutions. We're going to look at what are the available solutions and how can nature-based solutions help address this global challenge. Second, we'll be showcasing land restoration initiatives. For example, the Great Green Wall, the Middle East Green Initiatives, and many other examples from around the world where we are restoring land at large scale. Third pillar would be focusing on the private sector. The main event for Land Day is the Business for Land Forum. It would be a place where corporates, private sector, finance, and banks would be meeting together, and we will address how private sector can help in combating land degradation and drought. For example, by implementing sustainable changes in business operations and supply chains. How can they redirect private funding towards land-positive and drought-resilient business models? And finally, advocacy, which is very important. How can it foster and make an enabling environment for sustainable land and water management practices? I encourage you all to come and participate for Land Day, whether you are a civil society organization, NGO, private sector, UN staff, university, student. Come join us for Land Day. This is a place where all stakeholders will be gathering together and address the very important issue of land degradation and scaling up land restoration worldwide.
Thank you, Paula, for sharing these insights about Land Day and what we can look forward to in December as we prepare for this important event. It's important to highlight the incredible work being done on the ground to restore and protect our land. Joining us today is Billy Dumaliang, a true pioneer in environmental advocacy. Billy's efforts with the Masungi Georeserve Foundation are a showcase of the powerful change that can happen when communities come together to prioritize land health. Billy, we are excited to hear about your journey and the ambitious reforestation project you are leading in the Philippines.
Hello, my name is Billy Dumaliang. I am a trustee and the director for advocacy at the Masungi Georeserve Foundation. We protect and conserve a limestone ecosystem with over 800 species of plants and animals and majestic prehistoric limestone formations. And we also do work in rehabilitating around 2,700 hectares of degraded areas around this original site. And our project really started in the 1990s when the government went into a joint venture with our partner company called Blue Star to develop sustainably this particular area. The plan was really to develop only 30% and preserve 70% as forest spaces and parks, and one of them was the Georeserve. And that was the start of our restoration story. From a barren landscape, over 25 years has passed, and it is now a thriving secondary forest with hundreds of plants and animals, and with new species, lost species discovered every year. So we're very proud of what we have accomplished in this space, and we want to replicate it in our project to restore the watersheds around us. When we first started physically restoring the land, we encountered a lot of resistance. We didn't know that there were already a lot of interests in this forest land despite it being protected since 1904, since we were under the American government. So apparently we discovered that there were quarrying companies that had interest in it. There were real estate developers that were interested in it. There were land syndicates that were engaged in buying and selling of this protected land. So that was quite a surprise, and it was like stepping into a wasp nest, with all the wasps just flying around when we started the reforestation work. And we've learned to cope with that. I would say that at first we weren't prepared for that kind of work because our responsibility was really to reforest and finance. It was supposedly the government's responsibility to make sure that the land is free of speculation. So because there was a lack of government support, we had to develop the strategies to overcome these on a case-to-case basis. A lot of help came actually from the media and our social media and communications team, wherein we seek the help of the public in responding to these threats. And through that work, through storytelling, through engaging the public, we have been able to thwart and overcome at least 5 major forest invasions in the area. And a lot of these stories have actually been captured in the national media and TV and newspapers. And that's what usually brings government action into the picture. And so through that strategy, we have been able to save forest land multiple times from just, spurious groups and rogue groups trying to occupy the forest and to claim the forest. But again, we are looking really for more long-term solutions because it's such a frustrating thing an exhausting thing to do it over and over again. So to us, the real long-term solution is really empowering the public, being able to make them aware of the importance of these areas so that they will, of course, bring on the pressure to our decision makers and leaders to do something about this. There's still a long way to go in terms of overcoming these major obstacles, but we've seen major progress through the years just by truth-telling, just by courage and being able to respond on time. Land is a very complex issue. It's actually a very challenging to work on land because it involves maybe a lot of conflict, maybe a lot of different aspects of society involved with land, and even different in the Philippines, different agencies working on land issues. And so it's very complex, and with complexity, with difficulty comes opportunity as well for young people because we have the energy, we also have the ideas, we have the tools, the internet, our creativity to really break the mold and change the system in terms of how land is managed, land is governed. So I think the role of young leaders and activists is really to be able to bring forward the realities on the ground and make sure that the voices on the ground are heard so that the real problems, the actual problems, are fully understood by our decision makers. And at the same time, that the solutions are also correct. Because when there's no link, or if the link is not well established between the problems and solutions, that's not going to change the way things have always been done. So I think we have to use our voices, we have to use our creativity to make sure that the problems and solutions are clear and that we actually take action. And I think it's also important for the youth to create and organize movements and mobilize people on the ground, because this is where change really happens on the ground. And it's the youth that can really mobilize people and bring together people for common causes like this. What we're doing in Masungi is a good example of how addressing climate change can be a sustainable solution and a scalable solution in other countries and even in other areas in the Philippines. It's very interesting to us how nature-based solutions can actually alleviate poverty, can actually bring people out of poverty and give opportunities to people through things like sustainable tourism and other green jobs related to restoring landscape. At Masungiji Reserve, we have had over 200 plus corporate partners. And some of these corporate partners have stepped up not just to sponsor team buildings in our reserve or to, have their CSR activities on the ground, but they have leveled up into being forest conservation partners who contribute to our comprehensive forest restoration program. We have a program called Adopt a Hectare, where several companies have already promised their support or actually have given their support. So again, this is not just a tree planting thing. They're actually helping us with our, costs for the park rangers, operating costs for this reforestation effort. So we have put that all in a package so that it's easier for companies in the private sector to support through their financing. But beyond that, some companies have also supported us through the direct donations of, let's say, drones or solar systems, and also through technical training and knowledge sharing. Beyond CSR and these financing opportunities for the private sector, there's a good opportunity as well in the Philippines for the private sector to actually lead their own conservation activities. In the Philippines, there's a huge gap in land conservation, biodiversity conservation. We have only one ranger protecting 4,000 hectares of protected areas, one ranger on the average. And then we have a lot of protected areas not having even, the basic management plans. So we do have a huge manpower deficit, huge funding deficit at 80%, and also a management deficit with not a lot of protected areas having a good track record. So there's a lot of gaps, and to us, it's very clear that only through private sector engagement and civil society can we actually achieve these international commitments and even the national agendas. So it's really important to open these avenues through dialogue and legislation to allow innovation in this space if our goal is really progress on these targets of conserving land, of preserving biodiversity habitats. So I would ask policymakers and global leaders to empower us to rock the boat. So we hope that, beyond supporting our programs, that you really reach out to the grassroots NGOs, to the youth movements, and through marginalized communities who are doing something to address this crisis. Because, again, we feel the effects of the climate crisis the most, and we have the most motivation to do something about it, as well as the most motivation to innovate, to survive it, and to mitigate climate crisis. And so, thank you for inviting me to this podcast, and I hope to see you at COP16.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of On the Road to COP16 Riyadh. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and inspiring. The work of individuals like Billy Dumalyang and organizations like the Masungi Geo-Reserve Foundation demonstrates the power of collective action in restoring our land. As we continue our journey to COP16, let's carry forward the knowledge and passion shared in today's conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your network. Together, we can amplify the message of land restoration and sustainable practices. Join us next time as we explore more transformative solutions on the road to the 16th session of the Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. If